Welcome back to Dr. Finance. I am Andy Kim. Today, I'm going to give you the summary of the literature in facial masculinity and then risk-taking of the CEOs and the company. This is what I delivered already to the keynote speech at ICEBUSS in Indonesia. I was very honored to be there, and I was very happy to deliver, give an expert opinion about this facial masculinity literature, which is really getting popular these days in finance and accounting as well as in strategy. So today I'm going to summarize why did it happen, and then how they are going, right? What's the frequently asked questions in this literature from the referees, and then where we are going. And I'm going to present 2 of my working papers and 1 case study, which will be on my book coming soon. So you can enjoy it. Okay, I hope you enjoy it. So let's go. The face and voice of risk. Unstructured data in behavioral finance and accounting. Operational theory in management has been there ever since Hambrick and Mason, 1948. And in finance and economics, we started with Bertrand and Schwartz CEO style literature. Okay, what was that story over there? Well, remember Economics 101. You remember Cobb-Douglas production function? The inputs in your production of your company, you have 2 inputs, labor and capital, right? Labor and capital. And the CEO, is it just an easily replaceable input? Yeah, in that production function. For example, Elon Musk over there in Tesla. Can you easily replace that guy with Andy Kim over here, right? I hope so. If I were the CEO in the Tesla, yeah. But you will not agree. It's not easily replaceable because all those management, those employees, and then those capital employment, those things are already fine-tuned to the style of the CEOs, right? I'm quite different guy from, Elon Musk. I know. I'm nobody, but he's somebody there. I know, right? So that is quite obvious, but the economists have been slow in adopting that, right, idea. And only with Bertrand and Schwartz, we started to agree with that. And that's because Bertrand and Schwartz brought the whole data about the CompuStat universe of thousands of US companies testing with the CEO fixed effects in econometric way. Previously in Hambrick and Mason and all these operational theory, they were rather qualitative in their discussions. So that's the difference that I get. And then the CEO fixed effects matter in corporate financial decisions. So for example, M&As or investments, right? Or risk management, all these kind of things, right? Leverage ratio, that gets impacted by the CEO style, right? The fixed effects was a rough basket thing, okay? The Bertrand and Schwartz brought this basket of things that, hey, the CEO style matters. Great. But then the next question becomes precisely what kind of traits does that affect, right? Affects the company management. Well, people started to delve deeper into it. And the psychological bias has been the first one to be studied. And overconfidence was there with Managerial and Tate. And the thing is, the story is, you're rational CEOs, right? If you're perfectly rational, you're too afraid to take risk as a corporate manager because all your human capital as well as financial assets is concentrated in one company. If the company goes bankrupt or fails, then not only your financial assets go bust, but also your human capital gets busted too. So that when the board of directors ask the CEOs to take risk, the CEOs will demand a lot of compensation, more monetary compensation. I'm so afraid. What if the company goes bankrupt or something? So here's your money. But if the guy is more overconfident, then he doesn't or she does not require that much of a compensation. It's cheaper to motivate overconfident guys. Easy, right? That's what they tested. Then how do we measure that overconfidence was the issue? They looked at two things. One is option holdings. CEOs tend to have that call option contract, right? And then if the guy is overconfident about the company's future, then what would they do? Well, would you exercise that call option simply because it was vested and then it is exercisable? The answer is no, because the CEO may believe that my company true value should be sky high. Why is this price not sky high but the Empire State or something like that? And then the call option strike price is below that, right? In the money. But I don't exercise it until the end. Long holder. That's a typical symptom of overconfidence. So they use that, and quite a consistent result they find it. Another measure they bring is media-based measure, CEO interviews or any Fortune magazine coverage. The idea is Noam Chomsky, right? Language is a mirror of your mind. So if the CEO is confident, then in the discussion, his language will be more close to the confidence-related languages. So the word catching about confidence is there. And based on my experience with using executive comp data, this one, media-based overconfidence measure, fantastically works, right? I think this is much better than the option-based data in my experience in the empirical testing, right? Anyway, Hirschleifer and Low and Teo brings positive side, okay, evidence about overconfident CEOs. What are you talking about? Well, the problem that was discussed about overconfidence was like, what if this guy goes crazy, right? Going wild and take excessive risk, then the company will be in danger and then waste a lot of money. Too much risky projects. That's what they find in previous papers. But Hirschleifer and Low and Teo brings a positive side about the CEO. Why? Because look at the CEO, the Steve Jobs, right? Overconfident guy, of course, right? And then what was good about him was that he had the gut to push that long-term project, no matter what, no matter whether outsiders recognize it or not. Okay? iPhone, yes, right? That's mine. And then even when nobody was recognizing what the heck they are doing, he had the gut to push it to the end. Long-term, risky project, pushed it on. That's what overconfident guys can do, right? And Hirschleifer and Low and Teo brings an evidence that if the company is managed by overconfident CEOs, their company's patent is more groundbreaking, like Steve Jobs' iPhone kind of things, right? Goel and Thacker brought a theory discussion about it, and Banerjee et al. Has a paper about how to harness this overconfidence power. Okay, there's some optimal level that you want the guys to be overconfident, right? The governance mechanism works over there. That's a fantastic paper as well, and that is also coming up later in our paper in masculinity-driven settings. So wait for that. And then self-attribution bias is my paper over there, 2013 JBF. And there I look at CEO interviews on CNBC, the CEO's direct language, right? Good things, good performance, that's because of me or our team. Our team was great, so that's why we deliver great performance. Bad performance, well, that's external factors, right? Economy sucked, and then the industry was tanking. It's something out of my control. Attributing bad performance to outside factors. And that kind of attribution bias is there, and then we call it self-attribution bias. Why do we do that? To boost up our confidence. Over time, by doing this kind of attributions in our language life, you become more overconfident. That's not my word, but by Hirschleifer and then Subramaniam, okay? So I bring that evidence with CEO interviews language, right? Very sexy paper, so I hope you like it. And then Feng Li has a paper about it. working paper using the language in MD&A in financial reports, right? And then how also has that paper there, okay, using the financial reporting language. And narcissism is also there, psychological bias. And some of you may wonder, isn't the narcissism the same as overconfidence, in the sense that people don't like that kind of persons, like Donald Trump? Who likes him? But wait a minute, that narcissism is distinct from overconfidence. People get awfully confused about this, but we have to make a distinction, okay? Self-attribution and overconfidence is about either me or our team. But narcissism is only about me. You can think about it as a North Korean leader, 수령님. It's like a Kim Jong-un or Kim Il-sung, right? Only me. I am the only God in this. That kind of mindset is going on. Donald Trump, right? I have to be super duper. And the rest of our team, that's narcissism. Even going to the degree of what? Extreme case of narcissism, they go into what? Mental institution, because they are more likely to be sociopath, right? So that's the distinction. Overconfidence is different in that sense, okay? It's about expectation formation. How great we will be in the future. I am sure something will happen. We are sure something will happen as well, right? Whereas narcissism is like whatever happens, it's me. I have to be there. That's that. So psychological biases have been studied well so far. And then hobbies of the CEOs is another trait. Okay, if you have risky hobbies like airplane piloting or something, then chances are your management style will be more risk-seeking and sensation-seeking. That shows up. Okay, that's Kane and McKeown. Experience also matters when you are young, and then your young childhood experience lasts long in your professional life. Okay, that's what they find over here. And then people started to look at physical traits. More physical traits. Well, the easy to think about is the height, for first of all. Okay, there we need interdisciplinary approaches like sociology and biology and psychology and things like that. And then Graham, Harvey, and Puri, they find that tall CEOs are more risk tolerant or risk loving and deliver higher growth to the companies, right? Tall and young CEOs. Why is that the case? Tall guys in their social experience, right? They get more confident about themselves. And then that's because people in the society, they have the prior that the tall guys are more, how do you say, capable or competent. And then has been studied by other researchers like Bodenhorn, and then Merlin Price, and then Adum, Korniotis, and Kumar, right? More likely to participate in the stock market and things like that. Now, having studied about the height, what's next? Of course, they also studied with BMI, but what's next? Well, they easily think about, right? There's comes my question, okay? Quiz. Some biological traits that are related to risk-taking, okay? We want to study something about risk-taking, the biological traits. My quiz. First quiz. This is charging bull, okay? It's like a mecca for finance guys. We have to go there and touch that once in our lifetime, no matter what, right? What is the most popular part of the statue is my question, right? Of course, that's more subjective to my standard, but one of the most touched parts, an interesting part of my question, right? My answer is the balls, right? Some of you may wonder, right? Isn't it the nose or the horn? Maybe, but I say balls. Yeah, it is shiny over there, over here, but it is also shiny over there. Thinking about the place is like in the hidden place, and then how many times do the people have to go there so much so that it has to be shiny like that? If you think I am kind of pervert, you're wrong. there's a news article talking about it. Tourists love to rub the bronze balls of Wall Street's Charging Bull statue. Why? And people thinks that it gives you good luck. Good luck? What do you mean good luck? Well, for that part, to get a good luck, you have to do something about it, right? You have to do something. You have to make a decision or risk taking. You have to do it. If you don't take risk, no good outcome will come to you. Okay? That's the part, right? Taking risk and then getting good luck. Okay? What makes you take the risk is a question. And that has a lot to do with your testosterone hormone. And that testosterone comes, a large part of it comes from that part over there, right? That part is called testicles and testes in Greek language. And then because it is, medical study has been originated from that Hippocrates study, right? And then that testosterone, it has a lot to do with your masculine behavior. Of course, this testosterone comes also, female also have testosterone hormones, right? Just like male have estrogen in their, body there. But it's disproportionately more coming from there. That's an interesting part, right? We are interested in. Now, what more interested in we are is that hormone itself and then the masculine behavior. Testosterone and risk-taking, Nadler and all, right? They find that the traders with testosterone treatment were trading more frequently and called for price significantly higher than true value and made the stock price more volatile. Okay? Is it about the performance or the volatility? It's about the volatility I'm talking about. It's not necessarily the performance, right? The performance is more about the first moment of your stock return, and then the volatility is more about the second moment of your stock returns. So that's the distinction we have to make, right? Either jackpot or bad outcome. How widespread is it? It has to do with your masculinity or testosterone, or so. That's our argument. Then risk preference determined in the womb of mom, right? People find it, right? Cronqvist, right, at University of Miami, he studied the Swedish data, and then especially fraternal twins of the, in the girl fraternal twins or girl-boy fraternal twins. If you think about the girls in each pair, right, A versus B, which girl would have more testosterone in prenatally, right, and then throughout their lives? Well, that's part B, pair B, because the girl over here had testosterone influence coming from right next to you in that womb, okay? That's precisely what they find. And then the girl in this pair, compared to the girls in this pair, they tend to trade more in stock market, okay? Participate more and take more risk. And then another study that I want to highlight is John Coates' study about the fingers, right? Your finger tells about your risk preference. Why? Because when you are in the womb of your mom, if your mom was somehow stressed out, then a lot of testosterone explodes in her body, so that it influences the testosterone level of the baby. And consequently, the baby or you are more likely to have high risk preference, and then your finger tells about it, so that the fourth digit finger will be relatively longer than your second digit finger. Okay, and then he tested it in the trading floor of investment banks in London, and then he found out that the guys with the longer fourth digit finger, they are better risk takers and then deliver better performance as traders, right? And then testosterone, good. But the question is, how would you measure this for real world CEOs, and that in large sample? How would you do that, right? Is a one big challenge when we study the CEO traits. Remember, we've been talking about the CEO traits literature, upper echelon theory, okay? Shall I ask all these CEOs and then call them up and then can I meet you there and then show me your fingers? Good luck. And that to that United States CEOs. I'm in Korea, okay? They are extremely busy, right? So how can we overcome? In the following picture, which is the most memorable in that following picture? Is the one split second I give you, and tell me, right? So, yeah, shall I do it again? Yes. Right, this is the picture I took on one Sunday morning after receiving lunch tray with a latte, right? There's a French toast because that's my favorite dish, but forget about French toast there. People say they remember latte with a face on it, right? That's an important part. Easily rememberable, and then people pay naturally much more attention to the face or human face-like things, right? Why is that the case? Because it's hardwired into our brain, deep in our brain. And that brain part activated whenever we detect the face detection machine in our brain is located hard into the basic part. That has to do with our, maybe in the fish time or frog time, when we were frogs, or lizard, okay? As we evolve more and more, the outer part of the brain gets stacked up. So it has to do with our basic instinct compared to the recognizing things over there, right? So that's the distinction. The face, we try to detect face, and not only detect face, we try to extract information from any faces that we detect. And it is also the face itself tells you a lot about the person. It is informative. Not only we try to detect faces, but also it is more informative about the competence of the person at least. That's what Princeton psychologist Todorov found, okay, in their research. And then physical trait of the CEO, right? That's interdisciplinary research of social science and biology. In face, right? In the face study, beauty premium has been studied well by Hammermesh and Biddle in AER paper. And then Halford and Su has a paper about the CEO's beauty premium. And then a most recent paper about facial features is the trustworthiness study, okay? Xie, Kim, Wang, and Wang, right? The Kim is Kim Jong-bom 교수님 in University of Hong Kong. A very sexy paper, by the way. They use digital face recognition technology that I brought, right, in my paper. And then they use it to measure the facial trustworthiness measure, right? I'm going to talk about it later, but they find auditors charge 5.6 percentage points less audit fees to the firms with trustworthy looking CEOs, right? How is that guy looking trustworthy or not? Is he more likely to be deceptive, trustworthy? Okay. How do you measure? Essentially, it's like trustworthy and then more like untrustworthy kind of things, right? The interesting thing is this effect is way more pronounced in their initial audit fee setting stage rather than later stage. Of course, that's when you meet the person first face to face. That's why, okay? Any facial information about the risk tolerance, yeah, is the part that we are interested in, okay? Now, there comes our study, okay? And then facial masculinity is there. Trustworthiness is a separate dimension. Facial masculinity. Why? Facial masculinity has to do with testosterone. You have to be, testosterone is assumed to be driving the facial bone growth in sexually dimorphic way during puberty. Children, they, are not sexually dimorphic, but as you go through this teenage process, right, your hormone explodes, either testosterone or estrogen, so that you become more like, the bone grows more like guys, and bone grows more like girl or ladies, right? That's the impact of these hormones, right? And then the bones in your face may be a good track record about that. Okay, that's the idea about here. And then facial width to height ratio is significantly positively correlated with testosterone levels in adult male. That has been documented in the series of papers by these people, the researchers. And then more masculine-faced male are more likely to do aggressive behavior in sportsman setting and things like that, right? If you ask me about the most typical masculine face, well, there comes Mike Tyson. The facial width to height ratio, the way we measure is the distance between these cheekbone end, right? Divided by the distance over here, the midpoint of your eyebrows, right? Eyebrows, and then the point of your upper lip, right? If you think about this bone over here, right? That's this distance, right? So facial bone ratio. This is quite popularly used in anthropology as well. And then if you ask me any feminine looking face, well, Justin Bieber. Any 꽃미남 in Korean terminology, right? The 연예인 or good-looking Tom Cruise kind of guys, right? Good-looking people, whether it is male or female, they share common features. 1.83 female, the facial width to height ratio. Is it male or female? Oh, yes. That's it. Good-looking versus not, right? That goes also there, but if you ask me about masculine-looking CEOs, right, by this ratio, Jack Ma, right, Alibaba. Well, the facial masculinity has to do with achievement drive, right? That's what I'm focused on right now in this discussion. Achievement drive. These guys with facial masculinity have a strong drive to achieve higher social status. This kind of guys, they have to be the leader. I have to be the leader of great organization, right? Climbing up the social ladder. That's this guy's job, okay? And then thinking about how much, he had to go up to the social ladder in that, he started from nowhere in China, rural place, as a English teacher. And then now he is the CEO of the biggest e-commerce company in the whole world, right? That achievement is very, very strong, right? And then the achievement drive shows up in his face, right? We can see that. And then in the literature, how do you measure the facial masculinity? It has been this way. Use ImageJ software. And then that's a computer, throw in your picture and then open up in the ImageJ software like this. And then you, using your mouse, pinpoint one end of your face to the other end. And then Eric Schmidt's face is over here. Thank you. And then the height of the face, you measure it this way. Okay? The number of pixels you can count over here, right? That's how we have been measuring facial width to height ratio. Of course, one single human RA's measurements may be inaccurate, so we use multiple RAs to, at least 2 different RAs, independently measure these things and take the average of it. If the difference is too big, a third RA measures independently and then capture the pairs with minimum variances. Anyway, so minimum differences. Anyway, recent development, right? So that's the way we measured facial masculinity. Now, there's a lot of controversies going on in the literature, but this is what I have to recognize. Facial width to height ratio is not affected by pubertal testosterone. That's found out by some of the researchers that I listed before. But, right? They also find that the strong correlation with testosterone with facial masculinity after they control for age of the person. And then the bone growth, right? Facial bone and then the testosterone level. Is it really robust? And then some papers find the result is not there. But we have to, we just recognize in this literature that just like in Jia, Van Lent, and Zhang's paper, in JAR, they say this way: while the mechanism linking facial features to facial masculine behavior are not yet fully understood and remain subject to debate in the neurosciences, the literature proposes that an individual's face features can be used as a biological marker of masculine behavior. And what is more is that hormones are also social and are often studied as outcome variables to examine how they respond to social contexts, right? Nevertheless, the evidence that documents an association between facial masculinity and masculine behavior is strong, and we rely on it for our empirical strategy to examine the association between a CEO's facial shape and misreporting. So they've been arguing this way, and we are in the same spirit, right? Now, quite reliably, right? Researchers have been finding supporting evidence in this direction. And then facial masculinity of males shows significant association with testosterone-driven behaviors like aggression, risk-taking, and deception, and egocentrism, seeking dominant social status. Okay, the paper goes on and on. I'm going to discuss some of it over here. In CEO setting, okay, achievement drive. The question is more masculine-faced CEOs managing bigger companies? Because bigger companies management implies higher social status in corporate world, right? You want to manage Fortune 500 companies instead of, nobody knows companies, right? That's higher social status, obviously, right? Nobody denies that. Now, what you see on the horizontal axis is the quartile of these facial masculinity. Number one is Justin Bieber kind of faced CEOs. And then number 4 is Mike Tyson kind of face, okay, CEOs in executive comp data, which is top 1,500 biggest US companies, right? Throughout, right, the sample period of 1992 to 2010, okay, in my data. So I show you the average company size. The company size measured as the log, natural log of total assets, right? You do it with sales or market cap, you get the same results anyway. You see a clear pattern that more masculine-faced guys manage bigger companies in the US. And then, yeah, they are driven to achieve social dominance, and in CEO setting, but such pursuit of dominance would result in managing bigger companies. That's what I document. And then Elaine Wang's seminal paper in 2012 is like this. They look at the company's return on asset. That's accounting performance. Remember, previously it was the size. There, it is about the performance in accounting sense, right? Do they deliver better accounting performance? Overall, the answer is yes. You see the positive correlation, except for the highest quintile. That's in my sample. I replicated their result, right? And then I show with this bar chart. Why don't you see perfectly coherent result over here? That part, it will be answered in the next slide, okay? On so far, more masculine-faced CEOs delivering better performance. Wow, that's interesting. And then they manage bigger companies. Doesn't that come with a cost? And then the cost, right? You can suspect that may be related to some unwanted consequences. The question is, how do you deliver better ROA? Okay. You can think about 2 different ways. One is by purely working hard and really selling a lot of products with a high margin, and then you're doing great business. That's one way, okay? Number 2 is managing your financial reports, right? Cosmetic accounting, right? Why? Because you are so thirsty to deliver better performance in the short run. And what's the consequence? Well, here, Jia, Van Lent, and Zheng. You see Ya Changzheng's photograph over here, and then what they report, what they document in the top accounting journal, Journal of Accounting Research in 2014, is precisely this one. More masculine-faced CEOs companies, they have higher probability of being detected and then restating their accounting statements. Cosmetic accounting problem. Yeah. So that's something unwanted consequence due to what is that? The excessive achievement drive, I guess. So that's what they document. So far, the discussions have been about the performance, the rather like a first movement, right? I was interested in the second movement, the risk or volatility part. And there comes my paper with Shinichi Kamiya and then Park Soo-hyun, my student, right? And then Reader's Choice Best Paper Award, and presented at the AFA, and then, so that was there. There we used the same executive comp data, and then we find that the masculine-faced CEOs increase the risk of the firms, and then increase the financial leverage of the companies, so that the stock return volatility is bigger for this kind of masculine-faced CEOs companies, right? Are more acquisitive in terms of frequency of M&As and then merger target size. They try to take over bigger size targets than smaller ones, right? Why? That's a souvenir, right? As showing your social status increasing higher, right? And then spend more money on M&As. That's another the symptom, and that's not really adding value to the shareholders. So negative response to acquisition announcements happen, and then if you look at their compensation structure, it's more linked to the stock return volatility, high Vega compensation, right? Now, my paper's innovation, technological innovation in that paper was really about this measurement, right? Until then, it was about hand measurement, but there could be a lot of human biases, not a bias, but the human error, trembling hand, okay? So why don't we just throw in the pictures to the computer and then let the computer measure it, right? Automatic face detection is there. And then like this, right? We got the idea from, in this process, right? There is an app about generating average face of multiple people, right? You must have seen this kind of things. Here we have Korean CEOs, right? And then input those face pictures to the computer, and then the computer spits out the average of these faces, right? How does that work? Well, in that process, in each picture that you input, it detects the 68 different landmarks, right? 68 unique address, right? Landmarks, and then take the coordinates and then take the average of each coordinates, relative coordinates, right? So that you will get the average of each landmarks, right? Representative of those pictures. In that process, we intercept, right? We intercept and then measure the facial masculinity of each different persons. By the way, this must be your first time to see the average face of the Korean CEOs, right? Asian guy. And then the first page in my slides, you must have seen the average face picture of US CEOs, more than 1,000 people over there. And then machine measured landmarks like this. Yes, it works like this. And then if you want to look at some famous CEOs, Korean Air CEO is over here. Very masculine face, right? Yeah. And then Professor Kim Jong-bon 교수님, their paper tried to measure the trustworthiness measure. They use inverse cosine function based on these distances of these landmark points, right? Same face detection technology applied, right? Very interesting one. If you are interested in measuring your own facial masculinity, just punch www.fwhrmeasuring.com and then you will be able to throw in your JPEG face pictures and then measure your FWHR. Okay, hope you like it. Now there are some FAQs in the literature that I want to talk about. The first FAQ is, how about female CEOs, right? How about female CEOs? Why do you study only male CEOs, right? I wish I could study female CEOs, but number one, simply there are not many female CEOs in that sample. 95+% of CEOs in the US are male, right? And then number two, the FWHR and risk-taking relation has been found only for male in the literature, right? That is why, okay? In the future, as the number of percentage of female CEOs increases, it's going to be very interesting to see how female population are, different or same, right? That's going to be a very interesting area. Another part I want to highlight is Professor Jennifer Lerner's Harvard Kennedy School professor's comment, right? She says the differences between male and female on a wide variety of things are smaller than the differences within females and within males. So feminine looking guy CEO versus masculine looking guy CEO, that difference is already big enough, very big enough to study. It's worth studying, right? Male versus female studies, yeah, that's also interesting, but within male population studies also worth investigating. That's the key message. FAQ 2 is FWHR equals overconfidence? Are the guys with more masculine face, are they more overconfident? Why do you ask this kind of questions? Because Barbara and Odine's 2002 paper, boys will be boys, bad boys, bad boys. If you remember this, right, you're my age. Boys are more overconfident than girls, and then the testosterone, right, is what makes the guy behave more like, boys, wild boys. And so that doesn't that mean the facial masculinity imply overconfidence? Within a male group, does this relationship hold true? Unfortunately, many papers fail to find correlation between these two variables. Interestingly, Jia Van Lenten, my paper, and then He Yin Zheng Zhang Zhao, Journal of Accounting Research, 2019, they don't find correlation. It's distinct. It seems like it is distinct. Okay. Some referees argue, isn't it right? Option-based overconfidence measure or media-based overconfidence measure, they may be two different angles of measuring the same overconfidence, and maybe the FWHR is another dimension of overconfidence that yet they may be not perfectly correlated. Maybe that's something worth investigating in the future, but so far it doesn't seem like it. And yeah, with the request of referee, we are willing to test that, right, kind of things, but entertain that way of thinking. But here's my part of the argument, right? Mike Tyson's 1996 match with Holyfield brought him this notoriety that he's got nuclear teeth, right? Biting at that match, right? If Tyson was overconfident, why would have he bitten off the ear of Holyfield, right? I am confident that I'm gonna win no matter what, so I'm gonna keep on doing what is regularly, allowed in that game, right? The rules, as much as the rule allows me, I can do it, and then I can still achieve my championship. That's overconfidence, no matter what, okay? Steve Jobs, no matter what they say, I'm gonna do it, keep on doing what I do, right? And then achieve something very groundbreaking, no matter what. Okay, within the boundaries of rules or whatever, I'm gonna be able to do it no matter what. In the long run, I'm gonna win. If you are overconfident in this way, why would you bite him, right? The thing is, maybe Tyson hated losing so much, right? So that he was aggressively biting off the opponents. Like, I have to be the winner no matter what. That's different from, right? Long-term investment and then pushing on, right? Pushing on painstakingly, right? That's different. And this one seems like it is more like thirsty for the status of winning no matter what, right? I cannot be a loser. That's the thing. Okay, that's the distinction. You can call it long-term versus short-term. That's another way of taking it. FAQ 3, confounding facial cues in the picture. Is it really actually due to other facial cues captured in the photograph of the CEOs, like boldness or facial expressions in that picture? It's a valid question, okay? To the extent that Microsoft's Face API, Azure, can capture, we find the answer is negative, okay? We already tested it. So here are 3 different CEO facial pictures in our sample. Yes. Thank you. And then if we throw in, right, as we throw in into Azure, it spits out these numbers and results. That's after detecting the face, the machine gives, that says, oh, this guy looks like 51 years old, 64 years old, 59 years old, and things like that, no matter how old they are at the point of taking pictures. And then it looks like a male versus female. And then after that, they throw out the emotion score. Those sum up to be 1. You look at it, fear, sadness, disgust, contempt, and neutral, and happiness and anger. So they give this facial expression scores, and then glasses, right? Whether they wear it or not. And then mustache and beard, sideburns, and boldness, right? And then the percentage of boldness comes out. Okay, so we control all these things in my book, right? Coming up, and then we just find the FWHR's impact is persistent, right? So that's an interesting thing you can look at. Anyway, some of the people asked me, why don't you study the bold CEOs, right? Some scientific research suggests that boldness results from testosterone, those muscles that hold these hairs, right? The muscle gets weaker as you have more testosterone. More masculine guys, less hair. It's worth investigating, but in the future maybe we'll try it. But so far in our sample, it does not seem that strong a predictor compared to facial masculinity, right? You're going to see it in my book. Masculine face, a double-edged sword, maximizing utility through achieving social dominance. That seems like a position-dependent utility that cannot be summarized by money. 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 And that is an interesting part. Why? Because economists have been, able to summarize most of the things in monetary terms and utility, all these kind of things. Let's quantify it, right? Just like in everything in summarizing in dollar terms, either utility function or value function, it may be, right? But in the end, we are believing that we can summarize everything into the monetary terms somehow. But this one seems like position-dependent one that is not explained by money. That's my conjecture, right? You can say it. Right, the achievement drive, okay? The masculine-faced guys have is like double-edged sword. Positive side is that these guys have high achievement drive. Is that bad thing? No, that's great. Great. That's a big energy that we need sometimes. Unintended consequences is like when it goes wild, right? Just like biting ears by, Mike Tyson, right? Achievement drive, right? More willing to sacrifice his own wealth for the success of his group. Stirat and Perret, they find in an experiment, right? First, they set the people into person-to-person competition with some monetary games, right? And nobody wants to lose their money and sacrifice their wealth and just behave as selfishly as possible and maximize their value in their betting or something. Then, in the second stage, they form groups randomly and then tell these people, now this is group level competition, group A versus group B, okay? And then the thing is, for this part, this game to be winning, some of you, okay, any one of you, right, have to put your own money over there in the game. Who will be willing to sacrifice your own money, okay, game money? And then there, the guys with masculine face were more likely to put their own wealth, okay, and then sacrifice their own wealth for the winning of their teams, right? These guys, achievement-driven guys, there is a reason why these guys are put as a leader or celebrated, right? Many times, and we put them into the leadership position. And then proactively they beat people. He In Zhang Zhang's JIR paper, they study Chinese equity analysts, right? The thing is, in Chinese data, they track the record of which one visited the company's site to study the company and meet the people, and which one did not go there, okay? Using this data with Chinese analysts' face pictures, they find that more masculine-faced analysts are more likely to pay a visit to the company they are analyzing it. Meeting people, ni hao, and then just shaking hands and then asking about the companies directly, face-to-face, meeting the person. They are good salesmen, it seems like, right? You need to meet the people to do the sales, to do the research in this case, right? That's what they find. Consequently, these analysts with more face, the masculine face, their EPS prediction is more precise, better precision, right? Better forecast. Quite an interesting feature, right? And then they argue that, in Chinese culture, right, or Asian culture, the physical violation or violence, right, violence is not that much allowed compared to American culture. Violence or aggressiveness, right, is not that much allowed, so much so that this kind of aggressive achievement drive can be flowering into more productive direction. That's what they find, that they argue, okay? I partly agree with that and partly not agree with that, because who likes aggressions anyway in management setting? But yeah, that's their take, right? And M&A, more frequently, and they acquire bigger companies. That's my paper. And then unintended consequences of this masculine-faced CEO is like or not the CEO only, but also hedge fund managers. When it comes to hedge fund managers' faces, seems like they deliver worse performance than feminine-looking hedge fund managers. Why is that the case? Just like Mike Tyson, you can say it. They make a lot of mistakes just to achieve the dominance in the short run, right? They may be making a lot of mistakes so that the fund performance is not that good. High operational risk, they find it. And then higher probability of doing cosmetic accounting. Yeah, that has been published. And then higher probability of foul for World Cup soccer games, right? These guys are more willing to, sacrifice something no matter what to deliver winning for the game, right? In the World Cup soccer, making a lot of mistakes there. Okay, that's an unintended consequence. higher probability of being in penalty box among national hockey players. That's what they find. Carey and McCormick, right? And then the questions worth asking, I think, is that if more masculine-faced persons are more risk-loving, even to be called ruthless, why do shareholders appoint them as the CEO or the leaders? What more benefit can shareholders have via masculine-faced CEOs? Can better corporate governance harness the masculinity like Banerjee et al. In overconfidence setting? And for that part, right, I'm going to talk about two papers of mine and then one case study of mine, okay? So the first one will be about strategic alliance formation. It's just like a salesman story, right? Who goes out to wider variety of potential alliance partners, other things being equal. More aggressive salesperson, more aggressive CEOs will go out and reach out and say hi and then shake hands, right? Quite predictable. Yes, we find supporting evidence. And then second is corporate fraud and ESG, right? Jia Van Lent and Zhang, they find out that US CEOs, more masculine-faced CEOs, they deliver better performance at the expense of more probability of cosmetic accounting. The wrongdoings, mistakes, and this kind of things are there, right? And corporate fraud and embezzlement and all these kind of things are related, right? In this kind of setting, in this sense. So let's look at the corporate fraud events, and then how does the governance, internal governance mechanism help us to curb the power of masculinity-driven behaviors, right? That's our second paper. And then the third case study is about Goldman Sachs and Timberwolf deal, right? That's a very interesting anecdote. You're going to love this part anyway. So the first paper is with Ribuga Kang at Chinese University of Hong Kong and Jinggu Kang at NTU in Singapore. And here we look at the strategic alliance, right? Why? Managerial factors in alliance choice has been studied well. And the managers are involved in alliance processes. Of course, the CEO to CEO, they need to talk before they form any strategic alliances, right? So their character or traits should be an important factor. That's the idea. Effect of executives on innate traits on strategic decisions have been widely studied, either their tenure, age, or professional experience and education. Operational and theory has been there. Innate traits like overconfidence and narcissism and hubris has been well studied. Now, research question is, how about the CEO's drive to achieve social dominance in the context of strategic alliance partner choices, right? Achievement drive, how do we proxy that? Well, facial masculinity, all right? Now, alliance partner network and distance. Well, the Ribuga Kang, in American pronunciation, actually, it's Rebecca, right? But in Korean pronunciation, we say Ribuga Kang. She's an expert at strategic alliance, right? She has the data about it. And then how are firms connected, and new versus existing partner, and close partner versus distant partners in terms of what? Social network, right? How many nodes, and then the links, right? Risk-taking and aggressive behavior of allying with distant partners have been studied. Relational risk is there, right? If you think about the potential strategic partners, right? One with a very close partner that used to be your partner anyway before, known partner versus totally stranger partner, right? Distant partner. Why would you form a strategic alliance with total stranger over there? Long distance, either geographically or socially, right? Why would you partner with them? We don't have mutual friends. Then why? Okay? Then there is a good side, positive side, and negative side of forming these distant partners. The positive side is you can get some novel ideas by making friends with total strangers like that. Oh, totally new. For example, maybe Hyundai Motor and Apple, right? Oceans apart, and then totally strange industries, maybe, right? And then they're not used to each other, maybe, and then getting ideas from a new angle, totally new different angles, right? And then new learning will be there, and then it can break some rigidities within each company's strategic decision makings, right? And then it can help them to get over competence trap, right? They can get access to novel information and resources from remote partners of the network. You get US data, I get Asian data, maybe, right? You get phone-related data, I get, car-related data. Why don't we just mix it, right? That's quite explorable. That's a positive side, right? The negative side is relational risk, okay? Opportunistic behaviors can be there, okay? It can be an end game, ding, right, like that. So because of the lack of social and relational mechanism, you screw me up, I cannot retaliate against you that much, right, compared to my close partners. So that's an interesting negative consequence. That's risky. Distant partner is risky compared to local partners or existing familiar partners, right? So that's the thing. Over here, you have a company in our study, focal firms, right? And then you have a lot of companies, ABC, and then A, B, C, D, E, F over there. And then A, B, D, E are my existing friends. And then C, right? C is not my strategic partners. F is not strategic partners. But C is a potentially close partner because it's my friend's friend. F is a very distant partner because my friend's 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 friend. What? Okay. So like Kevin Bacon, right? 6 degrees, go away, and then you can meet everybody over there. Long distance, right? And distant partners. Other things being equal, right? Who will form the strategic partner with F instead of C, right? More masculine-faced guys, right? Maybe reaching out further. They're good, strong salesmen, maybe, right? Hypothesis 1, more willing to engage in relationship with uncertainty and expand their influence in the network, right? Could be there. So that the firms with CEOs with a greater achievement drive are more likely to choose non-local partners over local partners. That can be one prediction. And then the second part, well, large firms are more valuable partners due to their resources, information, and reputation. And the competition for large firms as a partner will be there. So if you have a choice, right? Not only the distant partners, right? When you make partners with distant guys, right? Distant guys, not only CEOs with more achievement drive will reach out further, but also when the guy over there is a socially dominant figure, you want to make friends with them, right? Why? Friends with big guy implies that I am one of the big guys too. I am one of the network over there, as opposed to friend with nobody. That's a social dominance achievement, I guess. So the more masculine-faced CEOs will be more willing to make friends with or make a strategic alliance with bigger companies, right? And then number 3, right? Number 3, well, the same idea. Instead of the company size, the social network, right? Social network. Status-seeking masculine CEOs, well, they are looking for recognition and then credit from the board of director and the media. And then they may be looking for strategic alliance with network central CEO, the companies, the companies in the center of the network. So that's network centrality of the partners can be a good moderator. And then fourthly, given that firms' performance is a critical factor directly associated with manager status, CEO's willingness to take risks will be manifested differently depending on the firm's performance relative to aspirations. The decline in firm performance provokes status-seeking CEOs to take greater risk to recover from the performance shortfalls. What do you mean? Well, if you look at He In-Zheng Zhang Zhao's paper, right? Their paper look at the Chinese equity analyst, masculine-faced guys, behavior of reaching out to the companies, right? Visiting the companies. Their effect, right? Their behavior is much more pronounced when these guys are working at a smaller company, smaller investment bank, lower social status. By working for this lower social status companies, these masculine-faced guys will be more hungry to achieve social dominance, so that their activity to reaching out will be more pronounced. Likewise, the CEOs over here, right? Masculine-faced guys will be more hungry to achieve dominance and then make social the strategic alliance with distant partners when their own company is in lower social status. One of the lower social status could be proxied by the current or past performance. If the past performance was bad, right, compared to their the aspiration level. Aspiration level, that's a strategic management terminology, but that's a performance benchmark, right? Performance benchmark. If your company has been badly performing compared to the benchmark, then you are more likely to be thirsty to achieve the social dominance, to rescue yourself, right? So that's our prediction in the fourth hypothesis. Now, data and variables, high-tech companies, industries over this period is studied. 93 to 2010. The industry is restricted because the network data itself is limited. The computer hardware and the communication and equipment, electronics and software industries in the US. And data comes from SDC Platinum and CompuStat data. And then dependent variable is dummy variable 1 or 0, which is 1 if you form a strategic alliance with a distant partner, as opposed to a local partner, which is 0. Okay. Male CEO facial masculinity is our explanatory variable, and firm size and all these kind of conventional controls are there. Empirical model, logistic regression like this, and we test the result. Yeah, our key result is in this table. Controls are all there. And then facial width to height ratio tells us that more achievement-driven CEOs are the ones more likely to form alliance with new distant partner companies, right? Very high statistical significance, right? Less than 1% p-value. And then what moderates this effect? Well, relative size of the partner. If the size partner company is relatively bigger than me, right? And then when the social network, the relative network centrality is greater than me, then they are more willing to reach out. And you can think about it this way. Strategic alliance, maybe forming a writer team, a research team, right? In academic research papers, writing papers with big shots versus junior guys, right? You can think of it this way, right? Anyway, facial width to height ratio, the moderator over here is below aspiration dummy when your company's performance was bad, right? That's this guy, right? So quite a persistent, coherent result we find. CEO's achievement drive is one of the determinants of alliance partner choice. Partner firm's size and network centrality, as well as the past performance of the focal firm, moderate the relationship like this. So I hope you like this paper. And then the second paper is about the fraud and ESG using South Korean data. Remember, previously it was all about the US data, but here I work with Junho Park of Myungji University and then Hojong Shin of Cal State Long Beach, right? And then our research question is, how is achievement drive of the CEOs measured by masculinity is related to the likelihood of committing corporate fraud, and how can we harness them? Okay, how can we restrain them? Is the ESG mechanism of the companies effective in restraining the achievement drive of the CEO? Just like in Banerjee et al.'s RFS paper, right? Using facial masculinity as a proxy for achievement drive to take risk, we document a positive relation and introduce ESG practice as an important factor that mitigate the adverse impact of masculine-faced CEOs. Now, part of the reason why we write this paper and we like about this paper, our project, is another common question in the literature, right? When people read our papers, right, my papers, they say, so what? So what? That facial masculinity is an innate trait, okay? Does that mean we have to discriminate for or against this masculine-faced guys in the position of the CEO or whatever position, right? Or even the employee selection process or loan pricing process, that kind of things. So what? Okay, I'm just born with certain testosterone level or certain masculinity face level. So what? But the thing is, how can we, right? How can we harness this power to the certain positive direction, or at least restrain, okay, before this guy go into the wild, right? Because there is a positive power, strength, or energy coming from this kind of guys, right? So that is something worth investigating, right? That's our argument. Anyway, so corporate fraud, right? Data, Hojong Shin has this data of Korean corporate fraud data, and then the researchers have been finding that there is a negative consequence of corporate fraud, of course. And then corporate governance matters over there, right? The better governance, the less likelihood of having corporate fraud. Composition of audit committee matters, board characteristics matters, and tenure of the chairman matters, and the CEO connectedness also matters. Various scholars have found out this effect. And then ESG and financial misconduct has been studied well before. And then why Korean data, you may wonder, why Korea, right? There comes Samsung Group, which is a big whale in our, small pond or small, financial market in Korea. This is, in terms of brand power by Interbrand or something, it's global top 4 this year. And then such a dominant figure in Korea. And then it represents the hiring culture and corporate culture of other companies in Korea, as well as, many companies are trying to benchmark Asian companies as well as, emerging market companies trying to benchmark Samsung in various different ways. And one of the ways they are unique is their hiring process, at least before the East Asian financial crisis, especially in the first generation of the Samsung Group, right? In the recruitment process of employees, this founder was present together with face reader or physiognomist, right? And other subordinates as well, right? To look at these job applicants and then try to gauge his or her competence as well as the possibility of this guy betraying us, right? How do you know? 영무의 상이로다. It's like a Korean terminology, like he's the face of revenging against or something. So that kind of thing has been there, right? And then was there at least. Nowadays they're gone. I heard. I'm sure they're gone, but they don't want to respond, I guess, if you ask. But it has been there. People have been documenting that for a long time. And so that's another reason, that's one reason we want to use Korean data. And then Koreans are ethnically homogeneous, alleviating the concern from ethnic differences in facial appearance. Of course, Korean companies are trying to globalize so that they will mix up with a lot more foreign talents, especially in upper echelon, I guess. But so far, it's it has been more homogeneous than not, right? So that's why the testing is easy. And then our data include 9,049 public company firm years observations from 98 to 2015. Now, CEOs with wider face are more likely to commit fraud than are CEOs with narrower face. That's what we find. Okay, masculine-faced CEOs in ESG-centric firms are less likely to commit than our masculine-faced CEOs in non-ESG-centric firms. How do you measure ESG-centricness? There is a report. There's a voluntary report about their own ESG performance, what they did and not, and that kind of reports. It's up to them to report it, right? The fact that they are reporting it may be suggestive that they are more concerned about ESG themselves. They are aware of this ESG concern compared to the ones that do not. Okay, that's our idea. Masculine-faced CEOs in sin industries are more likely to commit fraud than are masculine-faced CEOs in other industries. And then masculine sin industry is another ESG concern as well, if you remember KLD data in the US, right? And then masculine-faced CEOs with stock options, not stock, but stock options are less likely to commit fraud than the masculine-faced CEOs without stock options. Yes, so that's the equity incentive, corporate governance strength. Giving options tells us that the incentive is aligned with the shareholders so that they will be less likely to commit fraud. They don't need to, go in the wrong fishy way to show off their dominance somehow and then pocket something there. Masculine-faced CEOs in firms with less cash are less likely to commit corporate fraud than are masculine-faced CEOs in the firms with more cash. Cash issue, Jensen, right? 1986, agency problem of free cash flow. Okay, that's why. In family setting, you can think of it this way: the cash balance, right? Some families like me, right? My wife, just keep the bank balance over there, and then she gives me some allowances if that happens, right? That tells us a lot about how strongly she's monitoring me before I waste my money. If you're flooded with cash, you have more chance to waste your money. So that's why. Okay, that's simple idea, and then it shows us there. So you can go ahead and read this part. And then the model that we use in econometrics is Tobit model, because the dependent variable is the fraud count, right? It's bounded below 0, okay? And then up in a counting manner. And then explanatory variable, of course, fwhr, and then interactions with ESG variables, and other corporate controls and CEO, other traits, right? So our first result looks like this. Once the dependent variable is fraud, embezzlement, or collusion, or tax evasion, in each different cases, the outcomes, fwhr is strongly and positively associated with these outcomes. So more masculine-faced CEOs, the company is more likely to do fraud or embezzlement and all these kind of negative outcomes, right? Other control variables like this, we control for it. And some of the FAQs you may ask is industry fixed effects. Why don't you take company fixed effects? Because CEOs don't get changed frequently. So it's sticky. So that's why if you take company fixed effects, it will wipe off the CEO's facial masculinity effect. Both the dummy and then the fwhr does not change over time. So that's why. So we have to take industry fixed effects in this case. And then masculine-faced CEOs in ESG-centric firms. In ESG-centric firms, executives may not engage in unethical behavior, and then such behaviors destroy long-term relationships with stakeholders. Corporate reputation is built slowly yet quickly damaged. And then so first measure is voluntary issued sustainability reports. And then the second measure is being in the sin industry and things like that. So as you see, this result is strongly supportive that the ESG aware firms, they are less likely to, they are better at, harnessing the power of these achievement-driven CEOs, so that they will be less likely to do frauds compared to weak ESG companies, right? Weak ESG, strong ESG. That's the distinction we make over here. And then the adverse impact of masculine-faced CEO is more prominent in sin industries than not. And we also test the difference like this. And then masculine-faced CEOs in ESG-centric firms, internal governance mechanism may modulate the correlation between masculine-faced CEOs and corporate fraud. Third measure is CEO stock options. As I said before, cash holdings also we tested. And then the result looks like this. And then coherently, better governed firms, better incentive alignment companies are less likely to do fraud than worse aligned companies. That's what we find in either in options or cash holdings. We find a robust result. And when the results are robust, when we replace the fwhr with machine measured ones, and then other concerns like omitted variables and then overconfidence control, we try it as much as we can. And then reverse causality and detection channel can commission, we try it. And then is it driven by a particular period? It's not. All robustness tests yield consistent results with our hypothesis. And so we find that, better ESG strength companies, they are better at, restraining the power of these fwhr CEOs, right? And then the third is my case study, okay? One single case study, but that tells a lot, right? Too masculine to fail is my title over here. Who do you see over here? That's Carl Levin, Republican senator, right? In 2010. That was the hearing, right? Senate hearing about global financial crisis in 2008, right? You remember the global financial crisis, all the troubles that they had to go through. So the U.S. Senate had a whole hearing about this, and then they brought all those investment bankers related to this crisis, and then asked questions, not just asked questions, almost like interrogated them and then cornered them with difficult questions. And then Carl Levin found out one very provocative email, okay, in the piles of the Goldman Sachs documents. And boy, that Timberwolf was one shitty deal. That was an email sent out by a head of sales at Goldman Sachs within their sales team, right? After selling $600 million worth of CDO, collateralized debt obligation, to their clients, right? After selling off, this head spread email to his group. Boy, that was one shitty deal. And then the US Senate, got pissed off and said, is this your ethics? Where is it, right? Is this the way you treat your clients? Selling your shit to these clients, right? How to value a CDO? Terribly difficult, right? How to value it, right? It's like a Russian roulette, like spreading the bomb around, right? Guess what? the Goldman banker said, that was not me, sir. What? That was my predecessor, Tom Montag. He had left before. What? Then our question becomes, who is Tom Montag? What's his fwhr, from my perspective, by the way? And then where did he go? How is he doing now, right? Is a worth questioning, I think. So I Google searched it. And this is the guy, real McCoy, I would say. The real McCoy. And then his fwhr is like this, which is more than one standard deviation above the mean of US CEOs who are already highly risk-taking, and it's even more. And that's close to Mike Tyson. Yeah, I know, right? He left Goldman in December 2007 and scouted as the head of global sales and trading at Merrill Lynch, the competitor, in April next year. And his boss, John Tain, was fired after being acquired by Bank of America during that financial debacle, right? Due to the astronomical losses associated with the CDOs. Yes. Now, you may question, his boss was fired, then what happened to him? Montag survived at BM and thrives now. Wow. And he got promoted as the head of global banking and markets at that company, and promoted further as the COO in 2014, and has been the #2 guy in the bank. And in 2016, his total compensation was almost $16 million and was bigger than that of chairman and CEO Brian Moynihan, right? Business Insider reported that Montag is now the head of FICC Group in Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, which is the biggest group in terms of revenue. Within that Bank of America Merrill Lynch, his group is the biggest in terms of revenue. I told you, strong salesman. Seems like more masculine-faced guys are very, very strong men, right? This is the diagram. I got it from Business Insider. Too masculine to fail, I say, right? Generating revenues for the company no matter what. I told you, right? If the organization needs to do something about the situation somehow, somebody has to sell it and then do something about it. And that is the situation where this masculinity works. And then especially the guys with masculine face, they're more willing to just go out and reach out and sell it and then make money for our company, and then to win as a team by team competition, win it. Right. I told you, it's a double-edged sword, it seems like, right? We need that kind of guys for the sake of our organization, but to what extent? And is there a way to restrain that kind of power somehow? Internal governance, right? Maximizing utility through achieving social dominance seems to be captured by this facial masculinity. And then its achievement drive is one thing. More willing to form strategic alliance with distant and resourceful partners. And then they seem to be more stronger salesmen to reaching out to further totally new customers and new strategic partners somehow. Unintended consequence is they are more likely to commit fraud, but are effectively restrained under strong governance. And then they seem to be, less caring about ethical concerns. Yeah, and then they're aggressive, right? As a salesperson, maybe, right? That's what I document so far. Okay, so I hope you liked my presentations, and then your questions are always welcome to the comment section, or you can email me. And so hope you like it. The literature itself is very interesting, and still a lot of things to develop further. As I told you, right? It seems like it's capturing the part of the utility that is not captured by conventional monetary sense, right? And then it's not going together with overconfidence, right? So that's a different dimension. Don't try to summarize everything as overconfidence. there's a tendency in the literature and then the existing economists, right? Chicago, Minnesota, Carnegie Mellon driven economists, right? They take a step back as this behavioral finance take up the more stage. But when it comes to corporate, empirical corporate behavioral finance, they try to summarize everything as, oh, yeah, behavioral guys, overconfidence, shut up. No, right? There's something more about it, unfortunately. Whether unfortunate or fortunate, it depends on your stance, right? But I think there's a lot of other dimensions that we still have to explore, right? Because it's not the confidence itself. There's some more drive, intrinsic motivation, one of these, right? Not just the confidence itself, right? That affects your risk-taking behavior, whether in the short run or in the long run, can be different, right? Overconfidence, Steve Jobs, in the long run, I'm gonna push it, regardless of whether you recognize me or not. Hirschleifer, Low and Teo. In the short run, I have to do something about it. Is not related really to, doesn't seem to be really related to the confidence. If you're confident, why would you bite the ears, right? That's different. And the economists, I think, have to be more accepting to this kind of, newly finding results, right? Yeah, so that's the way we have to struggle up, I think. And then some of the questions were like, nature versus nurture, which is driving more, okay? The leaders, is it nature or nurture, right? Good salesman or strong salesman, right? That kind of things, right? It's worth investigating into the future. Perhaps this kind of, the economists have been exploring a lot about this nurture part maybe. Some of these, right, like incentive and all this kind of mechanism, market mechanism, and then these kind of things are driving our performances, regardless of who you are. That's great, right? But maybe we need to focus a lot more on the nature part as well. We cannot just completely ignore the nature part. The more important part will be how to harness this, right? How to control this kind of nature-driven part, right? First of all, we need to investigate deeper into this nature part, the distinction, right, of different kinds, and then how to control for the, the corporate purpose, whether it is maximizing shareholder value or stakeholder values, right? So that's my take on this study, right? I hope you liked my discussion, and then see you later, and then bye-bye.